What are you doing? I'll tell you what you're doing. You're listening to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast. Either you are, or I'll be skipping rope with your entrails. Ta-ta.
This podcast is brought to you by our patrons at patreon.com/Elder Scrolls Lorecast. Robots Radio. Games. Lore. Stories. Community. Just press play. Welcome to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast, the podcast where we explore the amazing universe of the Elder Scrolls. Adventurers, welcome back to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast. This is your host, Tom, or Robots. I'm here with my good buddy, Lotus. And Lotus, before we get into talking about Valenwood, because we're going back through our locations and we're kind of moving through the map, there was a big announcement today.
There sure was.
For the first time in just a few years. Well, it's been 4 years?
I know, it feels like it's been
Has
forever,
it been 4?
It's been 3.
3. It's the first time in 3 years.
Literally at the start, like, COVID had just started to become a thing that people were aware of.
Yeah.
And then shortly after ESO Vegas, the world blew up.
Yeah. So 3 years ago, right before the pandemic happened, the Elder Scrolls Online team had an event in Las Vegas where they were announcing the new year of content. And it was a really cool opportunity for you. You didn't have to buy tickets. You just had to fly out there. But, there weren't tickets to get in. Everyone just could get in if you applied or whatever. And then they had this big old event and you could actually talk with the devs and all these people, and you got to see the big reveal on stage, and they're going to do something very similar. We know what the next year of content is already, but they're still going to have a big event for lots of people to get together. And then there were like after parties where we went to different bars and hung out with all the different fans and the community and the number. We were just talking at the pre-show, a number of the devs like stayed up to like ridiculous hours just because they wanted to hang out with everybody.
Right, because we're on East Coast time. I mean, you and I, even though we're not next to each other on the same coast, so we share East Coast time. Mm-hmm. And being that, ZOS and Bethesda is in Maryland, they're also on East Coast time. So us going to Vegas is a huge time shift.
Right.
And then because you're running around doing all this stuff, come 3 a.m., it's like, well, that's 6 a.m.
It's really early in the morning at that point.
It is brutal for the time adjustment. So
yeah, but it was a lot of fun. And so they're doing it again. And Lotus has just found out that he's going to be able to go. I'm going to have to check with my plans and my wife and her plans and things like that. Hopefully I'll be able to make it. And if I don't, I hope you guys all have a wonderful time. And if I do, I hope everybody has the opportunity to get together and hang out. It would be wonderful to see so many faces in our community actually in one place and chatting and talking about all the stuff that we, of course, nerd out about every week on the show.
Absolutely.
So
same goes actually, just because I feel like, my work schedule is going to be loads of fun to make up for while I'm taking all these video game based hiatuses. But for all of those, actually making the trip up to PAX East, there isn't like an official Elder Scrolls thing there, but PAX East again is just like a big video game conference type of deal, which, tends to attract a lot of that type of attention. And actually, it turns out, I'm trying to finalize details on it, the Betrayal of the Second Era, the Elder Scrolls board game from Chip Theory, is actually going to be at PAX East. And I'm actually looking to get a hands-on as well as get an interview with the devs.
Nice.
So that'll be fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you happen to be going there as well, I'll also be there because that's down the street from me and doesn't require a 6-hour plane ride.
That's awesome. Yeah, that sounds like a fun event also. Lots of cool stuff coming up. So let us know if you're going. Rob the Princess is in chat. He says a few of our other Lorecaster guildies will be there. Chime in on the Discord. Let people know if you're planning to go, and we can all plan to meet up or whatever. Even if I do or don't make it, we could still make sure that that's a thing. Rob's definitely going to be there. Lotus is going to be there. Right. And so we'll just plan around it. But we could do a whole show talking about how much fun the last time was and all the stuff that you'll get to go see. But we have to talk about Valenwood today. Valenwood?
I always say Valenwood.
Valenwood.
I don't know.
Yeah, so
because it's made of the individual places that are referred to more frequently, like Greenshade and Grotwood, which are more regularly pronounced in games.
Easier to say
than the nebulous, like, oh, let's go to Valenwood. Well, oftentimes they kind of specify, oh, well, we're going to Grotwood, or they'll say, we're going to Eldenroot. Like they'll mention a specific thing rather than just the nebulous region. Right. A lot of people like Morrowind is a little more common. Skyrim's a little more common. Valenwood is actually like more prone to being separated by name, it seems like, in the series.
Yeah, and we haven't visited it in a main game, right?
No, again, other than, arena where you can go anywhere.
But that kind of doesn't really count.
But it's like more really procedural generation, just kind of it's a foresty biome that's procedurally generated. So like not specific, certainly not in a new gen style of handcrafted experience outside Elder Scrolls Online itself.
Right. And that's my point, is that from the beginning, these zones were all individual zones from Elder Scrolls Online. And you could explore lots of this area. So, but the Valenwood itself is kind of the overarching name for the region. It's roughly a name for the place where the Bosmer live, and also is regarded by just this being a big forested area. The Valenwood, or the Valenwoods, is sometimes what it's just called, because it's not so much that it's a it's more like it's a physical location based on this being a place that is a big forest, and less of it being a kingdom or a regional area like that.
Sure.
Like what you're saying. But you're right. It has a number of different locations, including Grotwood, Greenshade, Malabal, Tor, and Reaper's March, which are all locations in ESO, and some other minor locations as well. But here, let's go through each of those, because I think we're going to learn more about those as getting into the nitty gritty details about those. But before we do that, one thing I really wanted to point out, we're not going to get into the political history too much as we've been doing with this series. We're talking more about the locations and the land itself. But one of the things that is one of those debated points about, you go way back to the Merithic era,
the Merithic area of the map,
and the Bosmer, did they descend from the other line of elves, or were they created in the ooze? And there's that whole debate which we've talked about. And in the beginning of the first era, you have the formation of the dynasty, was it Cameron dynasty? I don't know where it went in my notes. But you have early on formation of these different kingdoms and things. And although the Bosmer were already settled in the region by the beginning of the first era, you also had the influx of some of the Aelids. So you have a little bit of that influence in the region as well. And by the time you have Bosmer and Aelids, they are very different types of elven groups that, even if they came from the original source group, if that makes sense.
Yeah, which I guess if you're dealing with Bosmer in general, your original source altogether would be the ooze, which we'll get into some other time. Ooze, again, we're not really doing.
Or was it the Altmer?
Or was it the
right? That's the whole debate. Is did they come from the Altmer and the ooze is mythology, or is the ooze actually the origin in some way? And there's still,
does that predate that? And actually both of them are again, topics for another thing that aren't just the region itself, which we're trying to keep simple to just regions for now, at least.
Right. But you got to kind of keep that all in the back of your head, because there is kind of this overlying mythology to the area. It's got this mysterious quality with the forests and the trees and the deep dark forest kind of quality. Now, what we see in the games isn't as deep and dark as it's sometimes described in the lore. So ESO has made it much more easy to traverse in these regions, even though you can climb up in the trees and things. But according to the lore, you have gigantic trees which change locations and all this kind of wackiness, which isn't really presented the same way in Elder Scrolls Online. So just be aware that stuff exists in the lore, but we don't necessarily see it in game so much. So let's go to Grotwood. Grotwood is the southeastern region of Valenwood. I don't know, however we're going to pronounce that. The region is covered in a dense jungle containing many massive grot oaks. We're going to talk a lot about grot oaks. from which the region takes its name. It borders Greenshade to the west, Malabal Tor and Reaper's March to the north, and Elsewhere to the east. So it is one of those areas that is on the border with Elsewhere. The Patamake Ocean is off its southern shores. Its capital is Elden Root, a city built on and around the Elden Tree, an ancient and massive grot oak. The Elden Tree is said to be the only grot oak to have a definite connection to the Green Sap Tower at any given time, a side effect of Anumarilis. I'm going to mess up names.
Numeralis.
When I read it in my head, I said it, and then when I said it out loud, I didn't say it right.
That's what I was about to say. I'm not sure I've ever tried pronouncing that.
Yeah. So failed attempt to recreate the White Gold Tower. And we've talked about the whole Green Sap Tower and the different towers in one of our wacky lore episodes.
Yeah, and the tower lore section of the lore.
Yeah. So if you're interested in that, go check out that stuff. But what's so cool about this is the capital, this Elden Root capital in the Big Tree, which we actually do get to visit in ESO.
Yeah, it's actually kind of sort of like one of the hub cities. It's one of the major cities if you're part of the Eldmiri Dominions Alliance, which is a mistake if you're in that alliance. But that aside, really cool city, very cool design. And because the tree is so massive, you kind of enter through the base and then like it's cut into tiers,
right? Which
is very cool and makes a really unique structure in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, lots of little loading screens going through it, which is a little bit weird.
Yeah, because there's so many tiers to the place.
Yeah. Yeah. So these regions, because this was the last of the original storyline stuff I played through. And these locations are not my like go-to locations when I'm like, I'm going to go back to a familiar city and go, like the only reasons I ever go back through these zones is because I'm like shopping for something. Or, like I just have to because of some weird quest line or something that popped up.
Sure.
But but for the most part, I'm not super familiar. I've been to all these locations, but I'm not super familiar. These are not like my home places. So
right.
There's that.
Mine either, to be fair, because it's not the main Alliance hub that I'm used to.
Right. I'm sure people are yelling at us right now. They're like, what? That zone is so cool. Yeah, it's cool.
It is really cool. So, I mean, to their credit, yelling at, those of you yelling at your podcatcher right now, you're correct. They're really neat designs and everything like that. But it's just not where I reside.
Right. So next on the list, we've got Greenshade. Greenshade is the southwestern region of Valenwood. It borders Grotwood to the east, Malabal Tor to the north, and the Isle of Aradon is just across the sea to the west. So this is like the bottom corner of that whole map. The main city is Woodhearth, situated on the westernmost tip of the region. The other major cities are Greenheart and the Aldmiri city of Marbrook, the latter of which once bordered Falinesti's spring location. The region consists of smaller forests, clearings, and meadows. There is also a swamp to the northeast of Woodhearth. So this area is a lot more plain looking.
It is, but just from a totally cosmetic. It's not really even like cosmetic. Just I think the name Woodhearth is super cool. So I love that city just on its like name value. But yeah, it's not quite as elaborate as like the Grot Oak or they make reference to, which we'll actually touch on Falinesti as we go along here. But a little less extravagant as some of the other notable places in the area.
Yeah, and I have to wonder if it was, obviously they designed the regions based on the way they showed up in the lore before they made them for Elder Scrolls Online, but it also is kind of the first area you go through after Aradon, if you're playing through the storyline.
Sure.
So it's a little bit more, I don't know, you're not into the deep, dark, spooky forest yet, right? Like you're kind of dipping your toes.
Right.
And then you've got like the Wilder King quest
like
and all of that stuff going on. Yeah. So that's that region. Then there's Malabal Tor, which is the northwestern region of Valenwood. It borders Greenshade to the south, Reaper's March to the east, and the Gold Coast of Cyrodiil across the Strid River to the north. So this is up on the northern part of it. The region contains the city of Sylvanar, the spiritual center of Valenwood or Valenwood. Hosts the city Valenesti, where it has rooted itself since the Oblivion Crisis, in what was once its summer site. The region is covered in a jungle similar to the one in Grotwood, but denser and smaller in scale. This is definitely like the creepy, dark kind of foresty region. So,
right.
You want to talk about Valenesti?
We probably should, because we keep making reference to it, and as opposed to like pushing it off, we might as well kind of make reference to the fact that we've said several times there are sites where Valenesti is. There's a summer site. Basically, there's seasonal sites for Valenesti. And
now, why is that, Lotus?
So Valenesti is one of the major cities, one of the 8 major cities of the province, but it's a literal walking city. Like
right.
It doesn't stay put.
Right. And at one point, it just kind of disappeared for a while.
Yes. In fact, that time would be during the Elder Scrolls Online.
Weird.
You just see the sites where Valenesti takes place based on, its corresponding season, but you actually don't see the walking city of Valenesti itself. Mm-hmm. So, again, not sure why. I mean,
yeah, I think
have
it was
a strong theory why from a programming standpoint.
Yeah, it was a development difficulty is my guess.
That would be my guess as well.
How the heck do they make that a thing? And so they were like, well, let's just write it into the lore that it disappeared for a little while.
It's missing in action for a while. Right. Which that could be. And I'm prone to agreeing with that. But it's not unusual for something of some degree of importance to just go MIA out of nowhere. We've had the situation with the moons. It's not the first time something's just poof, it's just not there for a while, and then suddenly it's back again at some point, and that. So it not super weird, but it's kind of be remiss to just bring up the fact that that's what we mean by Valenesti. It's essentially a giant walking tree city.
Which is really cool. It's a really cool concept.
It is. It's a really neat. And I've been secretly hoping that one expansion we get some type of weird thing where they explain it and we deal with it on some, I don't know, some degree where we can. I mean, like you said, technically it will be weird to have a city actually walking around the zone. And I mean, it's not just constantly on the move. It moves at points. It's not just, dancing from one location to another all the time. That's not really how it works. But,
right. It just gets up and migrates on occasion. Well, here's the way that I think they could make that work. And I don't want to belabor the point too much because we have lots of other things to talk about. But I don't think that you could just like stick it in one of the existing zones and just make like a city that moves around on the map. That would be very difficult to do.
Yeah, I think that would be weird.
With the tech and the way that the tech currently works. But to create a new zone and have some sort of story explanation for like it has been in a realm of oblivion for a while. And then get to go visit the location and design it really intricately and make it look really cool, but have it like floating in a sphere or, kind of like the way the Clockwork City is like, it's a physical location, but it's really to go into the city ends up being in a different zone. Really, that doesn't feel too different from any other zone other than it's odd. Like that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And you may even be able to do a sort of thing where like maybe the city's constantly walking through a realm of oblivion, but like the skybox around the zone is just moving. As if the city, like the roots of the city are just traveling in a direction.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So everything feels stable. Like you're still walking around this big, really cool looking zone. But when you look past the edges of it, the boundaries, the skybox is moving like it's walking through an even bigger area. Yeah,
that's actually interesting because that could give the illusion of it type of deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just kind of like when you're dealing with like I don't know, there's a few other times in the game where they've done some really cool stuff with like magic or a tower falling or like big epic kinds of things, and they play with the tools that they have in a way to give you that feeling of like something really cool and weird is happening, but it's very contained.
Right.
And it's, it really is just tricks of light and sound. It's like a movie set.
Exactly.
Right. So something like that. Now, let's get back to Malabal Tor, because it does have some other interesting things. It is obviously a site that's important to the Bosmer in that it has a location of Ooze, O-U-Z-E, a tar pit believed to be connected to the feared Bosmeri afterlife of the Ooze, O-O-Z-E, which we've talked about when we talked about the Bosmeri and those kinds of things, as well as Treehenge, the final resting site for the souls of all green ladies, which is another one of those story bits you can play and learn more about.
Yep.
But it's also actually in a place that other races are into as well, including the Wood Orcs, who have claimed to many different locations in the jungle, including their stronghold Drabble, Draw apostrophe Bull. B-U-L.
That's such an orcish name.
It's very orcish.
That's super awesome.
Yeah, it's along the northern coast, while ruins such as Abimath or the Blood Toil Valley hold vast historical and religious significance for their people. So oftentimes we think of orcs and we think of other locations, but not Valenwood. But
yeah,
there are places
like a
in
special type of Orsimer that are prone to being in Valenwood.
Yeah, which is cool. Like, it's another one of those little, I love like the little bits of the things that makes things feel different and unique and nuanced.
Yes. And actually kind of bouncing off something Rob joked about in chat when we were talking about the Falinesti. And I was actually looking through to see if it was mentioned later and I should wait to bring it up. And I was kind of thinking, because we just mentioned the Wood Orcs, it might be relevant to tap on this real quick here. Yeah. Something else kind of missing in action, so to speak, during the time of ESO, but we'd kind of be remiss to not bring it up, is another race that's actually another beast race from Valenwood that is just straight up not in ESO. And there's not really an explanation for it, which is a little weird, other than they're in hiding, but that seems odd that they're just straight up not there. But this race is called the Imga. And they're like, they're named, the Great Apes or the Ape Men. But they're, like I said, they're beast folk of Valenwood, the same way you have like Argonians are native to Blackmarsh, Khajiit are natives to, elsewhere, but they're basically like intelligent ape style people who live in Valenwood before the Aldmer ever apparently even arrived there. So they're sort of the original inhabitants.
Right. There's a number of original inhabitants, Spriggans and these other creatures. There's a lot of creatures, but other semi-intelligent or intelligent creatures as well.
Yeah, and they supposedly kind of lived alongside with the Bosmer tribes and stuff like that, but then they up and abandoned their posts and their cities and all of that stuff during the Second Era, and that was sort of just like the end of it. There's been very little information going forward relating to them, so it's weird that they're kind of just not there during the plane meld and the Alliance War.
Right.
But it's something worth noting, at least for the time being, because it doesn't seem like there's anything concrete on why they're gone. There's like theories and stuff like that.
Yeah. The history of the Empire, if I remember correctly, notes that when the Bosmer moved into the area and became the Bosmer, they had to quickly, I believe it stated something like they had to learn how to be the predator and not the prey in order to, basically find their place in that area. But that creates the assumption that they hunted down these other threats to their existence. Yeah. Meaning some of these, like the intelligent apes and some of these other races that may have been there ahead of them. So, yeah. And the fox people, Rob says, aren't the fox people?
Yeah, the Lilmathete is who he's referring to. For some reason, are they from this region too? Let me double check. I actually thought they were oddly from the Blackmarsh area. I think it's
Blackmarsh. Yeah, I think that's
which
right.
I guess we could have mentioned in that episode as well. But
there you go.
It's another one of those like kind of missing in action races. And yeah, now that Rob mentions that, I actually, because this is just a little tangent to a follow up, I guess, on the Black Marsh episode. In ESO, Lilmoth is a literal city name, and it's named after the Lilmothite. So like you've got a pretty strong tie-in. So like that's I think that's actually a good point though. I sort of forgot about them. Again, also being missing in action during the second
missing
era.
in action. Yeah. My sense of it is that they were, I don't know, pushed to the edges of society. Like if they do exist, they're in very small tribes and they don't really show up in the games, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And when the original, we do know this game, they've definitely gotten their legs out now at this point, but at this point, they're established. Whereas at the beginning, there was it seemed much like a Fallout 76 situation. Definitely felt like it was kind of just get out the door and get started already. And then they had mixed results that they've kind of been dealing with. Like, no, the game's like totally worth it now, even if at the beginning, maybe needed a little more time in the oven. And actually, I was just checking out the Foxfolk, the Lilmothite, or Vulpine Beast Race. Yeah, they inhabited Black Marsh. So yeah.
Yeah. Now my dog's barking at me. Stop. All right. So moving on, there's one more major location, Reaper's March, which has a freaking awesome name. And this is always the zone that feels the most like Elsewhere without being Elsewhere to me.
I was going to say this always felt like Elsewhere to me.
Yeah. It's got kind of that savanna quality where it's not so much forest and it's more like grasslands with like the trees remind me of like somewhere in Africa or something like that.
Yes. Yeah. Very savanna type of thing.
Yeah. So this is the western portion of let me start that over. The western portion of the Reaper's March region, known as the Northern Woods, makes up the northeastern reaches of Valenwood. It is a sparsely forested area that borders Malabal Tor to the west, Grotwood to the south, and Elsewhere to the east. It's up in the top right corner of the zone. It also butts right up against Cyrodiil. So you've got a mix of cultures because of that. And we went through the same thing last time on Elsewhere. Any of these zones that are kind of mysterious and out there, the parts of them that butt up against the Empire tend to be more, they feel more normal to us as humans to see the human influence in these zones. They
feel colonized.
Right. The biggest settlement is the multicultural city of Arenthia to the north, while Falinesti used to be found in the south during autumn months. Due to the close proximity of Cyrodiil and Elsewhere, the region was often raided by the Colovians and the Khajiit. So that's why it has some of those influences.
Yep.
For the same reason, both Colovian crypts and ruins of Khajiiti temples can be found here. The forests of the northern woods gradually diminished as they merged with Elsewhere's savannas to the east, which comprises the subregion of Dawnmead and Jodewood. Because of its distance from Valenwood proper, the Green Pact is often overlooked by the Bosmer living here. So it is kind of that like transitional zone.
That's exactly it. I was about to say, it's almost like an in-between. It's like, hey, is it Elsewhere? Is it Valenwood? Depends who you ask. Like, it's almost like that weird smear. It's like, okay, where exactly is the boundary from one region to the next region?
Right. And it seems to just depend on like what time in history are you talking about?
Also that, which, I was going to say, depending upon who owns certain regions and stuff like that can also depend a lot on where it's classified in certain eras.
Right. So notable places, we've mentioned some of these, but we'll just go back through the list so that you're familiar with all of these. There's Arenthia, which is the multicultural city in Reaper's March. There's Dis, which we hadn't talked about, which was a location that existed in the late Second Era. This is a location that's referenced to with Tiber Septim's conquest. It was a settlement, and I don't think it was a long-lived location, as it was just kind of referenced and then never referenced again. Elden Grove, which is a sacred forest and the birthplace of the first tree. Elden Root, which is the ancient city in central Grotwood, which we talked about. Falinesti, which is the tree city that moves around. Gilvar Dell, a town located in eastern Grotwood that was raised by Molag Bal. There's a whole story there about he sure likes to go visit cities and just blow them up, doesn't he?
Sure. Yeah, it's weird. Molag Bal and Mehrunes Dagon really like to go visit and just I feel like they just party it up, destroying as much as possible, and then just like, all right, bye.
Later, you clean up for me. See ya.
Yeah, somebody fix this or don't, whatever.
Then there's Greenheart, which is a city in southern Greenshade near the shore. Haven, which is an Altmary city in southeastern Grotwood near the shore. Hectaheim, an Aeolid ruin containing the heart of Valenwood, which is part of one of the quest storylines.
Yep.
Marbrook, which is a major Altmer city in eastern Greenshade. And a lot of these locations are Altmer because of the time of the events of ESO.
Right.
With Aldmeri Dominion and the combination of all these cultures working together and all of that. Selene's Web is a hidden forest between Malabal Tor and Reaper's March, ruled by Selene, a mysterious forest spirit. So,
quick side note on Selene's Web, which I originally did not know about, as Selene's Web is a dungeon in the Elder Scrolls Online, which is kind of where I just assumed it began and ended. But actually, it's a major dungeon in a creepy forest crypt thing in Elder Scrolls 1 Arena. Selene's Web has been there since the very first game, which is interesting.
That's cool.
So that's a long-standing part of the series, as well as Selene, the weird forest spirit thing that you interact with from time to time.
Right. This was another one of those polls that they pulled from back at the beginning of the series and put into ESO.
Really cool poll, too. When I found out about that, I was like, no way, that's so neat.
Yeah. Then there's Sylvanar, a city in eastern Malabal Tor, the spiritual center of Valenwood. South Point, a port city in southwestern Grotwood, founded by a cohort of Imperial soldiers in the early days of the Second Empire. Velen Harbor,
Velen Harbor.
Velen. It's an E.
Velen.
If Valenwood has an A,
it should be Velens.
Then this would be
pronounced
Velen.
it Valen in game, but who knows? Words are hard. I don't know. I call it Valen, but Velen looks more correct.
Yeah, words are hard. Then we have Whisper Grove, a city in eastern Greenshade destroyed by the forces of Mehrunes Dagon.
As if we didn't just mention Mehrunes Dagon and Molag Bal just going in and messing up the place.
Yep, that's another one. And then Woodhearth, the city in western Greenshade near the shore. So these are kind of the main locations. And again, they all have such good names. That's one of the fun things about the series is the cool names of the locations.
Yep.
So that's what we got on that. We're going to take a quick break, thank our patrons, and then we're going to talk about the flora and the fauna. So don't go anywhere.
This is Hamis Morak, Dragonborn, and you are educating yourself to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast.
All right, here we are in the middle of the show, and this is where we get to thank our new patrons, including one account with two names, Carla and Chris. Welcome aboard, Carla and or Chris. And also Obots A, and I don't know if that's an actual name, because I don't know if that's a name, but it's two words, and so I'm just going to say A for the last name, because I don't recognize the words. So we'll just pretend that's a name if it's not, just to be safe. And then Norm the Gnome. Also, thank you for joining us. Welcome to...
festive.
Yeah, welcome to the Patreon. We are currently at 123 patrons, and we got to shout out our Daedric Princes, Kira C, Neon Knight, and Noodle Al Dente, who get shout outs every week for being Daedric Prince tier subscribers. So thank you so much, and thank you to everybody who supports the show. We really do appreciate it. If you are interested in checking out what you can get, then go to patreon.com/Elder Scrolls Lorecast. You can get ad-free episodes. You can get a bunch of the episodes that were from like the first year and a half of the show that all just got put on the Patreon because it was before Lotus had joined the show. There's t-shirts and stickers, all sorts of different things for different tiers. Plus, you can join us on the patron chats at the end of every month. So go check that stuff out. We also have a review, and just a reminder, if you leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, we'll read it out on a future episode of the show. This one is from Blowhard Billy Bob in the United States, which sounds like an American.
What a great name.
And Blowhard Billy Bob says, my new go-to for Elder Scrolls lore discussion to sleep to me. I don't know what that means.
I assume to go to sleep to, because you have a soothing voice.
To go to sleep to. Okay. So Billy Bob says, since Fudge Muppets podcast is over, I am looking for something else, and this podcast is great. It covers things from all the games, including ESO, without being negative towards the games like Fudge Muppet are. Oh no. Great stuff. Well, thank you, Blowhard Billy Bob. And yeah, we try to keep things positive. I mean, obviously we talk about things sometimes when we're just like, I don't really like this, but we try not to dwell on that, right? Because there's so much good to focus on.
Sure. And the other thing too is, I don't know. I would think it would be helpful, but sometimes like I'll try to bring up like the difference, like between the games from a logistical standpoint, where we're talking about Falinesti. Okay. In lore, you could try to come up with some reason. Logically, it's probably because it was too hard to program in ESO.
Sure,
like
right.
It's like you could, you could take that as negative if you want, but it's like, well, no, that's just being realistic from like a game perspective as well.
How it works. They are a business. They'll have to ship something. So,
I mean, granted, that would blow my mind if we had just a walk-in city, bumbling around. But yeah, good luck with all of that.
Right. Yeah, that would be much more difficult to code into the game. So. Thank you, everybody, for your support, and thank you for leaving the review. And if you want to help us out, you can always rate us on Spotify if you listen on Spotify, or even if you have a Apple account but you just don't listen on there, you can always just log into the Apple app or online or whatever and leave something, and we'll read it out on a future episode. So that's that. Let's get back to the rest of Valenwood. Here we go.
You're listening to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast, dear child of cities. That is why the Night Mother loves you.
All right, so like we do with the other episodes, we got to talk about the flora and the fauna. And this location is primarily interesting because of one major flora feature. Is that...
Flora feature.
I don't think I've ever said that. New flora feature. Flora feature
allows you to pronounce our product's name.
Oh God! But obviously, there's a bunch of trees and plants that grow here. But it's really the grot oaks. The grot oaks are the big focus. I mean, you've got some
the major gimmick of Valenwood.
Right. You got the lots of regular plants and the plants that you collect and all the normal stuff, right? But then you have the grot oaks, and these are gigantic. These are very big trees, and if you haven't played ESO, they've got these winding branches that you can climb up in, and then the Bosmer have used these similar to the way that the Dunmer used the giant mushrooms to build places to live. So, and sometimes it's a little confusing because it's like you have a quest location on the map and it's like, you got to go over here, but it's like winding up in the tree above you and you had to climb into the tree from like 50 yards back where you came from before you actually get up to that location. So it's cool though, because they have entire, not just homes, but cities built in these trees. So they're very cool. It's a very unique zone because of that. In fact, this zone some of these areas are so dense with the trees in the lore that there's the concept of the tops of the trees creating this canopy covering the sky, which is referred to in some cases as a second sky or the middle green because of the canopy of leaves. So what do you think about all that, Lotus?
Aesthetically, I just think it looks really cool overall. But the thing that I always find about all of this, I guess, is I'm not the biggest high fantasy person. Mm-hmm. But I feel like in these trees and the way that we've ever seen them and designed and like the whole forest aesthetic involving all of this, it's super like fairy tale, like mythical, if that kind of describes. And I like how unique that is to this series, because honestly, overall, that's kind of like a pretty common fantasy trope, like, mystical wisps and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's like a pretty commonplace thing. But honestly, because that's so overall not a heavy duty theme, it makes this region sort of unique in that way, that it's mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's something that I kind of like. I like the variety of everything. And I feel like the weird forest growing around the population and the population being so intertwined with it makes the region really unique in and of itself. And that's one of the things I like about this series is there's so many different biomes and they're so radically different from each other.
Right.
Right. And personally, it's one of the things it's very, I don't know, soothing isn't the right word, but it's very relaxing being in some of like the giant tree things. You look up and you see like,
it would be beautiful
where you can just see the sky through all the branch work and everything like that. It's very neat.
Yeah, it's the kind of place that you would want to go visit. You know, like if you've ever visited a rainforest, it's kind of got that vibe to it, right?
Yeah. And you know, don't get me wrong. It's just like any place on Tamriel. I'm sure it's awful to live there because everything wants you dead. Right. Horvors popping out to maul you and stuff like that and drink your blood. But it seems at least less hostile than some of the other regions we've talked about, like Black Marsh and things like that. Seems like if you can be one with nature, things will be all right for you, at least mostly in Valenwood.
At least mostly. Yeah, it doesn't seem as dangerous. You're right. It's got that kind of fairy-like quality to it. So this is something I find particularly interesting about this, is that this, along with many other fantasy series and stories and things like that, you can trace the lineage back to the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit and Mirkwood.
And the idea of the when trees. When I read that on stream, I was like, woof.
Right. But like, Tolkien describes Mirkwood as being dark and the canopy of leaves over the area. And there's a group of elves that live there. The elves that happen to live there, the Bosmer, are very similar in a lot of ways to that type of elf in that myth. I mean, there's major differences, but there are similarities. But one of the things I find that I really like about what Elder Scrolls didn't do is they didn't have their elves living underground. Tolkien's elves live in that area, specifically live underground in caves, and this group of elves live up in the trees. So there are elves in Tolkien's stories that live up in the trees, but it's not the ones in Mirkwood. So at least that's different.
So the other thing too, without sounding like overly cynical, playing through like the original Elder Scrolls arena, and a little bit into Daggerfall, but Daggerfall started to find its identity more. Arena had some unique structural bones to the series, but you could tell it was kind of like, let's make fantasy world. And there's some really strong ties. And as the series has kind of gone on and gotten more writers and more teams involved with it over literal decades at this point, the ideas that started really similar to other works of fiction have become much more unique and found their own footing to make them different, even based on, like, orcs are not an uncommon thing, but the Orsimer being a civilized group of a society, but they're also an offshoot of Myr. It's like there's a whole bunch of different parts of other things that blend together in their own way with their own unique flourishes that make it so unique. And I feel like that's kind of the situation here as well.
Yeah, it's nice that you can see the influences, but it's not just a copy paste.
It's not a copy paste. It sort of almost was at the start, and then it found its own unique voice, I guess you could put
And I think they've done a good job of that. Like some of the things that they've worked in that really set the series apart over time have improved the series, but also done it in very interesting and kind of new ways, which is great. Before we move on to the fauna, there's one more item. There's the palm-leafed calliope trees, which you also can see in the region. And these are known, they're basically used for their essence, the seeds, and they're used in rituals with the Bosmer. So that's another one of the things that's kind of unique to this zone. Doesn't really show up in other zones. But then there's the fauna, and we talked a little bit about the fauna, the species that were there before the Bosmer showed up. And you go through this region, and just like any forest, you're going to see lots of different types of animals: monkeys, antelopes, giant wasps. I hate the freaking giant wasps.
The giant wasps are super annoying.
I mean, they're not hard to kill, but it's just like every time you run past one, they chase you, and I'm just like, oh god. Thunderbugs, spriggans are common here, but I feel like spriggans are almost like almost common
Spriggans
everywhere.
seem like they're pretty universally in any wooded area with any type of sort of magical influence. It seems like you'll end up with some Spriggans.
Right. And then, of course, crocodiles. They've got crocodiles in this zone, too. Horvors.
Yeah, those are the things. The horvors. They're like giant bloated ticks. That's what I was referring to. They're horrible.
Yeah.
I believe the Book of Dance and Fire, at one point, somebody gets like knocked out and they wake up with a horvor like tearing through their shirt to like rip their guts out, and they get saved like last second. It's like, wow, that's a real miserable way to go.
Yeah. Rob the Princess in chat says, I don't see many Spriggans in Alakir. It's a desert, Rob.
Yeah, they're just dried out.
They're just dried out Spriggans. They turn into
dried out.
They're just ash Spriggans at that point.
Yeah, ash Spriggans, perfect.
There you go. Then we've got timber mammoths in parts of Greenshade and Malabal Tor. Sench tigers and some other creatures that are more common to places like elsewhere. So you got some of that stuff as well. Anything else that comes to mind?
No, those are the main things. It's a lot of it's much more like standardized with like bigger versions of stuff. I guess kind of like the actual rainforest, bigger versions of some stuff. A lot of one of the things that it actually mentions at the bottom, which I think is kind of a good point, where it kind of mentions where it doesn't really know where you put it in the category of, is it flora or is it fauna? Because what exactly is it? And they mentioned the Spriggan thing, which I guess kind of crosses that bridge.
Plant people, sort of.
Right,
yeah.
Which also kind of equates to things called lurchers, which are these like bigger versions. They're more a hulking version of like a Spriggan type of thing, a little more tree, a little less, but like similar idea. And there's carnivorous stranglers, which it's like I've always thought of those as sort of like Venus flytraps. Yeah. So it's like,
you see them in dungeons a lot.
You do see them in dungeons a lot. So it's like, I don't know. I could see that being, more of a flora thing, because it's technically a Venus flytrap isn't like planning your demise. It's just waiting for you to trigger its stem and it sucks you in or whatever. Right.
Yeah. It is more plant than animal. Yeah. But that's most of it. That's most of the creatures that you can find in these zones. And I think that's going to do it. That's going to wrap it up.
I think that's our Valenwood synopsis.
Yeah. So there's one little note here that's kind of interesting because of the Bosmer and the Bosmer connection to the Wild Hunt, which we've talked about before. Go look up the episode if you haven't heard it. Yeah. Valenwood at one point was planned to have gone through a Wild Hunt during the Oblivion Crisis. So the events of Elder Scrolls Oblivion, which would have resulted in, of course, this area being overrun by monsters during that time. Right. Which means that they would have closed it off. And it means that the people in other regions would have changed the name. They would have called it either Adamor, which means spirit forest, or Gulmora, which means monster wood. That would have been freaking awesome. It would have. Don't go to Gulmora.
Also, I feel like, I know it's an M-rated series, but I feel like Monster Wood is a weird name for a forest.
All right, there you go. We're done. That's it.
On that note,
avoid the monster wood. Don't ask the monster about the wood. Nope. Don't point it out. It gets awkward. Ooh. Whew, somebody's going to make an ESO character named Monsterwood.
If there's not already an entire PvP guild named that.
Oh, man. All right, dude. Well, this has been fun. You have anything else you want to share before we head out?
No, not really. I was going to say, just recording Tales. We had a real time problem last week, so we're a little off kilter again, but should have an episode coming up for you all this weekend. And just let us know if you are attending either PAX East or ESO Vegas Part 2, the Vegasing or whatever they're going to call it. And hopefully I can actually say hi to some of you people in person, because these events are super fun, even if they are kind of problematic to design around.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. We'll be talking more about it as time passes.
Yeah, we'll have lots of updates. So.
And plug in, and we'd love to see people there. If maybe I can make it. Hopefully,
I know. We'll gotta find a way to make it too. Yeah, gotta get some more tasty dinners.
Tasty dinners.
The food was so good in Vegas.
Yep. Good times. Well, thank you for tuning in, everybody. My stuff, you can find my shows, all the other lorecasts I do, like Fallout and Starfield, which we're still waiting for an announcement on when exactly that's coming out, and Lord of the Rings lorecast and the others I do, all at robotsradio.net. So go check that out. But thank you for being here, chat. Thank you for joining us. Love to see all the comments, and we will see you next time. So stay safe out there. See you guys later.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for joining us. We'd love to hear from you. You can reach me on Twitter at robots_radio or Lotus of Doom at Lotus of Doom. Also, you can join us on the Robots Radio Discord channel. You can easily just search Robots Radio Discord on Google or check the description underneath the podcast. Also, this podcast is recorded live every week on Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on the Robots Radio channels on Twitch, YouTube, and on Facebook. So just search Robots Radio on any of those platforms. Come join us. We'd love to chat with you while we record the show, or before or after. Either way, just come hang out with us. And if you're looking for more information about my shows and the shows on the Robots Radio Network, go to robotsradio.net for all the information about all the shows on the network, including the Robots Radio Rocket Club, where I help both new and existing podcasters to grow their shows, build their audiences, and create the best podcasts they possibly can. All of that at robotsradio.net. We'll see you next time.